Ladies and gentlemen, I think we might have too many conspiracy theorists in the U.S. government as it is. Now, I understand I said U.S. government and everybody's ears just perked up. You all are now waiting on the edge of your seat with bated breath, wondering what am I going to say next? Paul Feinbaum, for some reason, God only knows why, is possibly considering the potential of maybe running for the U.S. Senate. Now, I don't know why anyone announces that they may possibly think about potentially doing something, and it's even weirder to me that the guy's employer is the one who broke the story, but nevertheless, here we are, and I have to say, I don't know that I like it. Like I said, I don't think that we need more conspiracy theorists in the U.S. government. I mean, after all, this guy is a major Michigan national championship denier. Welcome back to the Michigan Wolverines Team Rivalry Show. If you are likely to not vote for Paul Feinbaum, likely because if you're watching this video, you don't live in the state of Alabama, then like this video. And if you're not subscribed, then subscribe. Because like you, I'm not voting for Paul Feinbaum. So it just seems like a thing that you should do. Join this community of people who are not voting for Paul Feinbaum because we literally can't. Most of us live in Michigan. Speaking of Michigan, which is the main topic of this channel, as you probably surmised from the channel name, they're getting disrespected by ESPN yet again. So ESPN released their college football power rankings. How did the top 25 look in Week 5? Now, in both the AP poll and ESPN's power rankings, Michigan fell a spot. Why? I don't know. They had the week off. It honestly doesn't make any sense to me that teams who don't play a given week can actually go down in the rankings because they didn't play or because another team maybe did play and impressed. I don't know. That seems kind of silly to me. But again, I'm also not a believer in the AP poll. I think that we should wait until we get to the CFP poll. And I'm also not a believer in the CFP poll either because I think the CFP is an atrocity. It's a whole thing. Really, I think what we should have is just this computer algorithm that ranks teams via a whole bunch of data that's inputted into them. Why can't we just go to a system like that? That would be great. But nevertheless, here we are. ESPN has released their top 25 power rankings. And suffice it to say, I don't think Michigan fans will be too happy, especially with the result of the Nebraska game. Maybe it's where Michigan deserves to be. Maybe it isn't. I don't really know. We'll get to it in just a second. We're going to start with Ohio State at number 1, though. Previous ranking, number 1. Go figure. In this year's Ohio State, this year's Ohio State defense even better than last year's? Through 4 games, the Buckeyes have been absolutely dominant defensively, including Saturday's 24-6 victory at Washington. Now, here's the thing with the Washington game. I get it. Washington's offense is really good. They move the ball all up and down the field. They're really good at moving the ball up and down the field. Until you look at something like this is kind of interesting, isn't it? They're 52nd in passing yards in the nation. They're 29th in rushing yards. The rushing yards, not awful, but not all that great either. Also looking at their schedule, Colorado State, UC Davis, Washington State. They played nobody. They played absolutely nobody. And yet Washington is being singled out as the one really good example of how well Ohio State's defense is playing. So I will continue this argument. I will say Ohio State, and I'm making a bold statement here that I don't think is actually that bold. Ohio State has not played anybody. So I am absolutely contradicting myself from last week when I said that I thought Washington could beat Ohio State. It's because I have my maize and blue colored glasses on. If you haven't noticed, I'm a Michigan homer. That's what I do on this channel. I spout off ridiculous nonsense about how I think Ohio State's going to lose every game and Michigan's going to win every game and all that kind of stuff. When it comes down to it, in my heart of hearts, did I think that Washington would beat Ohio State? Yes, unfortunately I did. I did look at Washington's performance and think, hey, they've got a prolific offense. Ohio State's going on the road with a young QB. Maybe, just maybe, Washington can pull off the upset. But obviously that wasn't the case. Now, in no way will I say that Ohio State doesn't have a good defense, because they absolutely do. And if Matt Patricia is actually a good DC, then that's great. I have no issue with that. And I think that he is, he's at least got to be a decent DC to even get hired at Ohio State. Although Combs, I can't remember his first name. There's something to be said for how in the world he was able to get hired there, but it is what it is. In any case, let's go through Ohio State's schedule real quick, okay? Just real quick here. Texas, overrated. I'm sorry, Arch Manning, I think he's looked a little bit better, but everybody, the national media, are all saying Arch Manning does not look like who we thought Arch Manning was going to look like. And if you go back to that Ohio State tape, the dude was missing wide open receivers. He just was. Grambling is Grambling. Ohio actually was within one score going into the fourth quarter, I think it was. Maybe it was the third quarter. Yeah, okay, so going into the third quarter before falling apart. And then Washington let us down because Washington got into the red zone how many times and couldn't put the ball in the end zone. And then they tried that really disastrous fake field goal thingamajigger where the guy just threw the ball to no man's land. What was that? I don't know. But Washington, they moved the ball very well until they got into the red zone and then had absolutely nothing to speak of in terms of a running game, in terms of a quarterback run game. I don't even think that they really let their running back run all that much in the red zone either. But either way, it doesn't really matter. Washington's offensive line couldn't really do a whole lot against Ohio State's defensive line in the red zone. It really doesn't make a whole lot of sense, but suffice it to say that Ohio State's defense did a really good job at bending, not breaking. But even look at that right there. Washington was able to move the ball. I understand that's running the ball right there that they really weren't able to do very well. Actually, let me look at how many rush yards they had for this game. I'm curious all of a sudden. I'll just double check that real quick. Rush yards. 61. Yeah, they couldn't run the ball very well at all. So you're not gonna win football games rushing for 61 yards and giving up 150. You're just not. So Washington wasn't who we thought they were. So I think that this is. I still think Ohio State is overrated, and I think that they're very good. And could they make a run in the playoffs? Yes, absolutely. But the people who have Michigan losing to Ohio State at this point, no, I don't see any evidence that that's going to be the case yet. I'm not saying that it's a guarantee. I'm just saying that I think Michigan is better than their performance against Oklahoma suggests, and their performance against Nebraska even. And I think Ohio State is worse than Washington made them look. Washington just couldn't put the ball in the end zone. It is what it is. Oregon at number 2, kind of awesome to see 2 Big Ten teams, although I really don't like that Oregon's in the Big Ten at number 1 and 2. They had a great game against Penn State. They almost blew it in the last couple of minutes, so that part wasn't great, but they get punched in the mouth and then come right back and end up winning the game. Oklahoma's at number 6, which does actually really help from Michigan, all things considered. So that's really good to see, although it's kind of going to be kind of curious to see what happens with Oklahoma now that John Mateer is likely out for an extended period of time, although he did have a successful hand surgery, so that's good to see. So hopefully he'll be back soon. This is crazy. Indiana is power rated over Penn State, which is interesting. I think for now, maybe they deserve it, although this is power rating, not rankings. So however that works out. But I do think Kirk Cincinnati is absolutely building something down there in Bloomington for sure. Penn State falling from number 5 to number 8. I really don't think that they should be that upset about the Oregon loss, other than the fact that it just continues the narrative of James Franklin can't win big games. They're still very much in the race. I think the worst thing that losing to Oregon does for them is it just makes them continue the belief that they can't win those games. And it's really hard to win those games when you frankly don't see any evidence suggesting that you can win. And so what I would suggest is that they all, when they think about this game, they think about that fourth quarter and they think about the last 10 minutes of the fourth quarter, because that looked really good for Penn State. Now, whatever happened during second overtime is what happened. I fell asleep. But if they have any shot at winning the national championship, it's because they put aside overtime. They put aside the fact that they lost and remembered, hey, we actually came back from 2 scores down and almost won it. So, and it would be nice to see Penn State do something notable. I have nothing against them. You'll notice that I am continuously scrolling. That is because Michigan is power rated at number 20. 20? Really? They are underneath Vanderbilt, who actually moved up to 18 from 20, and power rated under Georgia Tech. Who has Georgia Tech even played? I gotta look this up. Maybe. Will it load? There we go. Colorado, crap. Gardner-Webb, crap. Clemson, overrated. Temple, crap. Wake Forest, crap. And they barely beat Wake Forest. All right. It's kind of neat to see Georgia Tech do well because they haven't done very well lately. They're not better than Michigan. I'm sorry. They're not. So I don't know what ESPN is smoking here. And then Vanderbilt, just see this real quick. Charleston Southern, are you kidding me? Virginia Tech, no. South Carolina, no. I'm sorry. Georgia State, really? Utah State, come on. Now look, if they go into Alabama and beat Alabama, I mean, maybe you have a conversation then, but Alabama just beat Georgia. Of course, Kirby Smart has an Alabama problem, so who knows? So we'll have to keep an eye on them. But either way, I don't think either of those teams are actually better than Michigan, at least not in a neutral field, especially considering the way that Michigan's offensive line played. I mean, again, you look at this number 20 ranking for Michigan in the ESPN power ratings. This is mostly, in my opinion, because Michigan has not properly used Bryce Underwood to this point. They haven't needed to utilize Bryce Underwood to his full potential to get the 3 wins that they do have. They should have probably used him against Oklahoma, although even though they didn't, it's probably okay that they took that loss. Because if you're gonna take a loss at any point in the season, Oklahoma is the one to take. They're not a Big Ten team, so it doesn't affect your chances at the Big Ten championship. And they're also doing fairly well for themselves as it is right now anyway. So that was a really good loss to take. I just think that we haven't actually seen anything from Michigan's offense just yet. I think the one thing that we did see from Nebraska that is concerning are all those drops. So those are things that they need to get addressed. Sharon Moore said that they worked on that over the bye week. But as soon as, if they work on that type of stuff and get that fixed, I mean, at this point, we're just talking about fundamentals. We're not talking about overall talent level. Although he did say that they were opening up a competition at the wide receiver room, and that doesn't make me feel very good. But in any case, I think strictly from defensive play and run game dominance, Michigan should be somewhere up probably near 16 or 15. I think Michigan would probably beat both Missouri and Iowa State right now. Florida State, maybe. Not Tennessee, not Texas, not Georgia. And we're just getting into better teams at that point. Although I love how they've got really bad SEC teams towards the top here. I mean, that's whatever. It's ESPN, so that makes sense. But the disrespect does not stop with Michigan's power rating. They're also disrespecting Chip Lindsey specifically, and I will get into that after this sip of water. Only about 15 minutes in? All right, I can spend 5 minutes on this. So they're going through all of the different first-year coordinators in college football. And they've got, obviously, Miami defensive coordinator Corey Heatherman in there. I mean, Miami's doing pretty well right now, so that makes sense. But look at this at number 2. They've got Ohio State defensive coordinator Matt Patricia. Again, their defense hasn't played anybody, but it is what it is. They give him an A. They give him an A. I hate to say it. He probably deserves it so far. I mean, even if they hadn't played anybody, even if Arch Manning kind of bailed them out because Arch Manning was going full stormtrooper mode and couldn't hit the broadside of a moisture evaporator that game, even if Washington's red zone play calling and inability to run the ball is a thing, it's statistics. The statistics look really good for Ohio State. And so that makes sense. He's got a lot of new starters. I think that once this team goes up against an offense that actually plays well on the ground, or at least has the offensive line to keep up with their defensive line, I think then you might start to see some of the cracks. Because Ohio State's offense was having some trouble against Washington's defense. And if their offense can't stay on the field and convert third downs, which to their credit, I think they converted a decent number of third downs against Washington, and they stayed on the field. They had a couple of sustained drives against Washington, but if you go up against a team with an even better defense, like you're a Michigan or a Penn State or an Oregon, those defenses are going to have your offense off the field pretty quick. And if you can't sustain drives against those types of defenses, then your defense is going to get drained. Michigan saw this last year against Texas and Oregon and all sorts of teams last year, unfortunately. But if you can't sustain drives, your defense is going to get very tired. And at what point does your defense just finally give in and the flood barriers break open and you're getting blown out? Now, it doesn't necessarily go that far, but I do think that Ohio State needs to kind of be cautious with this. I mean, Matt Patricia has had a great start to the season. I'm fully aware of that. And he is a talented defensive mind for sure. I just think that you all need to proceed with caution. Ohio State fans need to proceed with caution, because as soon as you go up against an offense with a offensive line capable of keeping up with Ohio State's defensive line, I think at that point, maybe they start to have trouble. Okay, so that's Matt Patricia. You'll notice how far I'm scrolling to get to Chip Lindsey. Good Lord. Michigan offensive coordinator Chip Lindsey. Although Lindsey had never coached in the North and lacked any connections to Sherrone Moore and the Michigan staff, his hiring still made some sense because of his track record with quarterbacks and the passing game. Some sense. Okay, so we're just not going to give Michigan any credit here. We're just going to say just a little bit of credit. It made some sense. I think it made a lot of sense. Did you see their offense last year? Kurt Campbell wasn't getting it done. All the respect in the world to Kurt Campbell. He wasn't getting it done. Chip Lindsey was ready to take the jump to the next level and go to a team of Michigan's caliber, or at least a team with the types of resources that Michigan has. It makes more than some sense. Michigan needed somebody to come in and help modernize the offense, help get them past Harbaugh football to where they're not just doing power run every play. And in Harbaugh's credit, they weren't doing power run in every play, but they do the boa constrictor type thing. And they're kind of starting to figure out how to turn Michigan's offense into a quick strike sort of attacking offense. I don't know that they necessarily need to go that far, because Chip Lindsey is also really good at building offenses around the type of talent that he has on the team. And the talent that he has on the team, especially defensively, which, if you play complementary football, that is still relevant, the type of talent that you have on defense, they still want to play boa constrictor to a point, but they need more weapons on offense. For instance, allowing Bryce Underwood to actually run the ball, which would be amazingly helpful to Michigan's offensive game plan. Michigan's passing game finished 2024 ranked only above the service academies. We need to just really hammer that point home. And needed someone to revive the passing attack and mentor freshman quarterback Bryce Underwood, the nation's #1 recruit. Here's the thing, too. Bryce Underwood kind of selected Chip Lindsey, too. I mean, they asked Bryce Underwood for his input on the offensive coordinator situation, and he said that he wanted Chip Lindsey. Pretty sure that's right. But in any case, their relationship was always going to be really important. So if Chip Lindsey has all of this different experience with the passing game, with quarterbacks, I mean, he's coached some really good quarterbacks, and Bryce Underwood himself says that he wants Chip Lindsey to be there, it makes more than just some sense. It makes all the sense. It was a great hire. Michigan has improved a bit and Underwood has flashed brilliance, but the freshman has oh my goodness, I apologize for my bastardization of the English language. Michigan has improved a bit and Underwood has flashed brilliance, but the freshman was a combined 21 of 46 for 247 passing yards in road games against Oklahoma and Nebraska. Okay. Here's the thing. So that's not on Bryce Underwood, in my humble opinion. A couple of those incompletions are on Bryce Underwood. But if you go back to especially the Nebraska game, I saw it was somebody figured it out that Bryce Underwood's like 50% completion percentage actually goes up to 70% if you take out all of the drops by the wide receivers. So that's not on Bryce Underwood. Now, that doesn't necessarily look good for Chip Lindsey because those wide receivers are still under his tutelage. But it's not on Bryce Underwood. At that point, you come back to, okay, is there something wrong with the scheme? Is there something wrong with the connection between the quarterback and the wide receiver, or the wide receivers just dropping passes because they lack some of that fundamental coaching, like foundational stuff? And if we remember from Sharon Moore's press conference, I think it was yesterday's press conference, he said that he noticed that a lot of the drops were because the wide receivers were kind of taking their eye off the ball before you can't see my hands, taking their eyes off the ball before the ball gets to them. And so then they don't see the ball, they drop it. That's something that's easily coached. That's a muscle that can be easily exercised. Just keep your eye on the ball, make sure that you catch it, then make your move. And I think you saw a lot of those wide receivers were just getting antsy. I think everybody knows, everybody on that offense knows Michigan has a Ferrari at quarterback, and they're just waiting to use him. And I think the wide receivers know that especially. And so the wide receivers are ready to make their moves, are ready. I mean, the fact that you've got Bryce Underwood back there makes the wide receivers maybe want to play even better and show off their skills. But, you forget that you want to make a play. Well, first you need the ball, don't you? So some of these fundamentals kind of get dropped off if you're trying too hard, basically. The Wolverines are running the ball very well with Justice Haynes and Jordan Marshall, but ultimately their success hinges on Underwood's development and his ability to be a big factor against the tough opponents still upcoming, including USC, Washington, Michigan State, and Ohio State. I think Washington and Michigan State are both pretty solid W's for Michigan right now. I think Ohio State is probably a W as well. USC, ironically enough, I think Michigan has the best chance to lose to them of anyone in this list because of the time zone, because USC has a really prolific offense, and if Michigan has trouble on defense, then they might have to start trying to play a keep-up game with USC, and I don't think that Michigan, even with Bryce Underwood at quarterback, is necessarily built to come back or to keep up. I think that they're built to slowly choke you out. So we'll see what happens there. USC also just refuses to play defense, so we'll see what happens with that, although their defense actually has gotten better. Allow me to contradict myself yet again. But the thing is with all of this being said, I come back to the problems that Michigan has, I think, are really easy fixes. It's all fundamental stuff. I mean, think about the offensive line, the way that the offensive line has come together in the past couple weeks. I mean, they got their butts kicked against Oklahoma. And we all thought this offensive line is in a lot of trouble, right? Greg Crippen was a revolving door during that Oklahoma game. Brady Norton, I think it was not having a good game. It was a problem. Central Michigan completely changed that narrative, or at least the narrative that there was inherent problems with Michigan's offensive line, rather than the fact that they just needed to figure out how to gel together. The Central Michigan game showed that they can gel together, and then the Nebraska game showed that they can gel together against a decent opponent. And they absolutely did. Honestly, the scoreboard doesn't reflect how much Michigan dominated Nebraska in the trenches. It's a disappointing thing. I mean, at the end of the day, the scoreboard is what matters. But Michigan in the trenches, I think, is a lot better than we thought they were during that Oklahoma game. So all that's left at this point is just the fundamentals of the wide receivers catching the ball. Don't take your eye off the ball. Don't try to make a play before you have the ball. Don't overestimate your abilities and then forget something as basic as just keeping your eye on the ball. And this is all to say that I think Michigan's problems are not only extremely fixable, but also extremely simple, and things that they will have plenty of time to work out before they get to an Ohio State. They've got Wisconsin to go through first before they get to USC. That's my only concern with the USC game, is that there's not a ton of time before they play USC. But they do get, they did have the bye week. They do get Wisconsin, who's not doing very well right now. I'm not saying it's a tune-up game, because Wisconsin's not just going to roll over and play dead like Central did. But, I mean, let's be honest. I think it's going to be a blowout still. But if Michigan can get something going in the passing game against Wisconsin, I do really like our chances against USC. And then depending on how that game goes, I think it's basically smooth sailing until Ohio State. And then with Ohio State being at Michigan, Ryan Day having issues with Michigan, just getting in his head, I think Michigan can win out. So that is my answer to Ohio State, to ESPN disrespecting Michigan. I'm going to leave it right there. What do you think? I mean, what do you think about ESPN disrespected? Was this actually disrespect? Or do you think that Michigan is fairly rated by ESPN? I keep wanting to call them Ohio State for some reason. That's just how much I don't like ESPN. Do you think that Michigan was fairly rated by ESPN? What grades would you give Chip Lindsey? What grade would you give Wink Martindale, Bryce Underwood, Sherrone Moore? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments section. Let me know. I'll read your comments on this next episode of Feedback Friday, which might be on Thursday because our Friday videos never do very well. So I don't know. We'll see what happens. Don't forget to like and subscribe. We'll catch you in the next video.